This movie is everything that people who don't watch old movies think of old movies.
Oh, Tig, of all the Zoom chats in all the world, you walk into mine. You watched 1942's Casablanca for the first time last night, so I'm gonna turn it over to you to get your impressions. Here's looking at you, Tig.
This movie is everything that people who don't watch old movies think of old movies.
Oh, that sounds like a damning insult.
It's not meant to be damning. It's just what went through my head the first 20 minutes of watching the movie. It was everything that I assumed it was going to be.
Definitely the first 20 minutes, it spends a lot of, not only does it spend a lot of time sort of setting up the situation and the world and all that, but yeah, it has a lot of the kind of tropes that you would expect. Are you suggesting that after the first 20 minutes, something changed in you or what?
I would say after the first 40 minutes is when I started to actually enjoy the story. It took a while just because the movie is very much a movie of its time because this was made during World War II, right?
Yes, this was made during World War II. So for people who haven't seen it, everyone has heard of Casablanca, but you might not be fully familiar with what it is. Casablanca is a 1942 picture starring Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. It's concerning this guy, Rick, who owns a sort of a gin joint in Casablanca. Casablanca is in German-occupied French territory. Ingrid Bergman and her wife arrive in town trying to get visas to flee to the United States. Rick has visas.
Perhaps a little long.
I don't want them here overnight.
Don't be afraid of that. Please keep them for me. Thank you. I knew I could trust you.
But he's been warned this guy absolutely cannot be allowed to leave Casablanca. But it turns out that Rick had a past relationship with Bergman's character. So there's just sort of drama involved in like whether he will or will not help them. It is very much of its time. And yes, you're right. It was made during World War II about the situation in World War II.
Yeah, and sometimes that's why I shy away from older movies because I'm a history buff. I love history. We both know, like, we both are into history and stuff, but you have to know your history in some capacity to even understand in the first 20 to 30 minutes what's going on. Are those French police? Is that what, I don't know. It's like Morocco and it was under French, but then the Germans came in. And so the Moroccan police department are trying to be neutral in a way with the Germans. And this is sort of a neutral area point. So there's Americans. And it's like, if you don't know that, you don't know what the fuck is going on at all. Prior to you getting me to watch this movie, I would have been like, I would have sat through the first 15 minutes and been like, what is this? Is this like a war drama? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I like how you almost slipped and said, making me watch it.
Once the drama of everything started to kick in and Rick has the passport, he's like a neutral guy. He's like, doesn't want to play favorites with anybody. He just wants to. So he has these very important documents that could help a lot of people, good and bad. Mm-hmm. And once that starts to kick in and then the backstory with him and Ellie, then it started to be fun and suspenseful. It took a while for me to warm up to certain characters that I didn't have a feel for. It took a while, like the Moroccan police head guy,
the Claude Rains character. Claude Rains is one of my favorite actors of the era. He's great.
He's out for himself too, and he's a little bit like skeezy when it comes to certain decisions. At one point, he has that passport thing where there's pretty women who can't get out of like Morocco, and he asks Rick to kind of not give them to them.
That's point is even somewhat subtle. Like, a young woman comes to Rick and she basically suggests, "Look, I'll prostitute myself for one of these things." So she doesn't come right out and say it, and she's underage to boot, which and it's one of these things where it's like if you're not paying close attention. That might go right over your head.
Why do you interfere with my little romances?
Put it down as a gesture to love.
Well, I forgive you this time. But I'll be in tomorrow night with a breathtaking blonde. And it'll make me very happy if she loses.
Yeah, the Claude Rains character, I mean, he's sort of set up as a foil in the beginning. You think he's sort of maybe a bad guy-ish. He's sort of an antagonist. But you could see there's no love lost between him and the Germans either. He's just looking to get through this whole situation the best that he can. And he's a schemer. He's a scammer as well. He he likes the situation the way it is because he gets to go gamble at Rick's and Rick gives him a pass.
Yeah, there were some pretty funny scenes with that when he's forced by the Germans to close down the place. Rick is like, "Where do you get off close with me?" And he's like, "Oh, there's some illegal gambling going back there." And then immediately the guy goes up to him and goes, "Here's your winnings." And he's like, "Oh, thank you." And he puts it in his pocket.
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
Up on what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Everybody out at once.
That really the joy in the picture is the writing. It's in the dialogue. There's so much clever dialogue. Ultimately, this, the real meat of the story has to do with Rick's relationships with Ilsa, with Claude Rains' character, and with Victor Laszlo, Ilsa's husband, and so on. And it's just sort of about Rick navigating this emotional minefield that he's in.
And once I realized that it's Casablanca, and the whole point is it's a city of scoundrels, so everybody's sort of dirty.
I think one of the other things I think people who haven't seen it before might be struck by is how much of it will actually be familiar to them without them even realizing it, because so much of this movie is sort of ingrained in our pop culture now.
I wrote this down immediately in the first 5 minutes. Holy crap, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, the first scene when the Germans come driving into Morocco and the people are in the streets and they literally drive the car into like town and they're the same scene. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lucas and Spielberg were drawing heavily from this period when it comes to stuff like that. The map with the plane.
Yeah, the map of them like traveling.
Paris to Marseille.
I bet they're asleep in New York. I bet they're asleep all over America.
The quotes have just been quoted endlessly. I mean, you so many bits from this movie. The quotes even if you haven't seen the movie.
I knew 5 quotes. Here's looking at you, obviously.
Here's looking at you, kid. Here's looking at you, kid. Here's looking at you, kid.
Yeah, here's looking at you, kid.
Louis, I believe this is the start of a beautiful friendship at the end. I knew that.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Of all the bars, what's the one? Of all the whatever's...
All the gin joints in all the world.
You gotta walk into mine.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
The line that I was expecting him to say, but obviously is "Play it again, Sam," but that's one of those ones, I guess, that people say, but it's not actually in the movie.
Sing it, Sam.
Yeah, it's much like Luke, I'm your father. It's very famously misquoted.
So it was funny, I knew all those. I also knew all the characters from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Which is weird because I remember watching those as a kid, but not really knowing who all of them were.
There's definitely one other quote that you've got to know as well that you might not have remembered.
Yeah, which one am I missing?
We'll always have Paris.
You'll always have Paris.
Oh yeah, you'll always have Paris. Okay, yeah. I didn't really like
Ingrid Bergman.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of her acting in this. I don't know if it's just more because just the part itself didn't give her much to work with. I didn't really care about her character as much.
For me, I think that's relatively fair. I mean, she's one of the big actresses of the era.
Please listen to me. If you knew what really happened, if you only knew the truth.
I wouldn't believe you no matter what you told me.
But she's never been one of my favorites. She's been in some of my favorite films, unlike Bogart, who I love Bogart.
He's so cool.
Oh yeah, he definitely has that like aloofness.
If you're gonna watch a Bogart movie, is this his big role kind of thing? Like this is what people love him most in? If someone said I want to watch Bogart's best, performance, would it probably be this?
I would say it would be on the list, but no, I wouldn't say it would be this. I mean, they'd probably go with like the Maltese Falcon. They might go with the Big Sleep, probably too, that I would rank a little above Casablanca. Casablanca is more sort of a sentimental favorite among fans of old cinema, not just because Bogart, because of the broadness of the cast. This cast actually has a lot of people who were really well-known character actors during that period.
With the ending, so Elsa comes back and she convinced Rick to give her the passports to get the hell out of there because Laszlo is so important to the resistance.
Right.
Does he convince Ilsa at some point they're both going to run away with each other and they're going to set up Laszlo and she's okay with that?
Yeah, it could be a little confusing because he's effectively telling three different plans to three different people, to Laszlo, to Ilsa, and to the Claude Rains character, and he's really like lying to all of them. I believe the impression that he gives Ilsa is that he was going to provide means for Laszlo to get one of the visas and to get out of town, and she would stay behind and stay with Rick. Meanwhile, he tells Claude Rains that the plan is for him and Ilsa to escape, and Laszlo would stay behind. Yeah, it was this whole sort of web of lies.
I did like the line at the end after they shot the German guy and the police show up and you think, and
oh, that's the other very quotable one. Yeah, okay.
He says, gather the usual suspects.
Yeah, round up the usual suspects.
And I was like, that's friggin' awesome. It's kind of screwed up in a way.
Major Strasser has been shot. Round up the usual suspects.
That's actually where the title of the movie, The Usual Suspects, comes from. Is from.
Oh, that is. When I heard that, that's what I was like. Is that kind of a reference? That's what the movie Usual Suspects is a reference to.
Well, no, Casablanca got it from The Usual Suspects. Yeah.
Oh, fade in the beginning, even though you could say it was cheesy, but again, it's not fair to judge it. But I liked. You could see it's a painting in the beginning, but I liked the fade down into.
Yeah, that was well done.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. And my favorite shot was the safe shot.
Yeah, that one's really well done, especially because you know that they had to have things situated just right so that his shadow appears and is distinctive and you can tell what he's doing. So even though it looks like he's just walking in this nook and going through the safe, you know that they had to have it in like some weird position and he had to get it a certain way with the spotlight a certain way.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a nice shot.
And there's those couple of images like them walking away at the airport or him with the lights off in his place, smoking a cigarette, depressed. Like, you've seen those images before, even if you've never seen the movie.
I did enjoy the soundtrack. They did it again, very Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yes, and that's actually another thing that without realizing that is like that song. Of course, you know that song.
Oh yeah.
Must remember this.
And that song. I was gonna say Sam, awesome character.
Yeah.
I knew as soon as he played the first song that he plays, I was like, oh, I know this song. Every song he plays, I knew.
I love you, still have to be you. Wonderful, you had to be you.
He's kind of like Rick's only friend.
Ain't you planning on going to bed in the near future?
No.
We'll take the car and drive all night. We'll get drunk.
Shut up and go home, will you?
No, sir. I'm staying right here.
The side characters in this movie are one of the things I think that make it. Peter Lorre's character, the Sidney Broadstreet, who he was the big guy with the hat, who worked the black market, like the bartender, the Russian bartender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, kind of a fun
take
character.
her home and make sure you come back.
Yeah, I like the scene with the dueling songs. The Germans are singing their song, and everyone else. It's it rings a little cheesy these days, but I'm sure that back in the day, must have been like, oh yes,
yeah.
Yes.
There's one thing I noticed just overall with watching older movies is that it seems very often that you'll see an old actor and actress and you'll go, oh, they kind of look like this person or they kind of look like this actor. And you start to realize like there's just these decades of people picking who's acting in their movie because when they grew up as a kid, that person looked like that person. Like there was a couple of times I was like, oh, this dude's just like Dom DeLuise and Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks probably loved these movies and he picked a character that looked like that guy and it was Dom DeLuise.
Yeah, you can kind of recognize sort of lookalikes over the years. A bit on the making of the movie is actually kind of fun and interesting. They started filming this movie without a finished script. They were writing as they went along. They actually didn't even know how it was going to end.
That kind of explains the beginning, right?
Yeah, it kind of that like why the beginning is a little more not only uneven, but the beginning's a lot more different in tone than the rest of the.
Yeah.
And they were like literally writing as they were going, and it was one of these things where they kind of described later where they're just churning out these pages, just trying to get this thing done in time, And they wrapped up the picture and immediately started work on this next picture, not really thinking much about what they had. Figure, okay, there's another one in the can. Let's move on to the next. And it all of a sudden became, it won the Academy Award for Best Picture that year, Best Director that year, a bunch of other stuff, and it became this beloved fan favorite. And they had no idea that they had something on their hands. So for people who haven't ventured into films of this era and who are going to watch Casablanca along with us, to me, like my recommendation is, if there's something that you're going to pay attention to me, it's all about the dialogue. Just pay attention to that dialogue and just enjoy the ride that dialogue takes you on, because the conversations tend to be just really clever and really witty and really snappy. And there's just so many really great lines. Often you don't pick up on them until like your second viewing. Like sometimes the back and forth banter, it's like, oh shit, that was actually really good. Or, oh, there's some subtle stuff going on there I didn't notice, or, stuff like that. Like
there was a part of me that after I ended, I kind of was tempted to play it again, because now that I knew like everything, I was like, maybe I should just watch it again, almost, just because now I know what to expect and I knew what was going on.
I didn't pick this one because I think it's the best movie of the era. I probably could have drummed up 10 other ones that would have been more impressive from like a filmmaking perspective, or more exciting story-wise, or anything like that. It's Casablanca. It's so ingrained in so many parts of popular culture, especially in movie culture.
Yeah, and now I can say I saw it. It doesn't matter how old it is or whatever. If it's a good story, it's a good story.
That is Casablanca, which means it's time.
It's time to give Eric something to watch. I'm going to bring you back to the 80s then.
Oh, an 80s picture.
It's been a while. You're going to watch Twilight Zone the movie.
John Landis, American Werewolf in London. Steven Spielberg, E.T. Joe Dante, The Howling. George Miller, Mad Max. These acclaimed directors take you to another dimension. A journey into a wondrous land whose only boundaries are your imagination. Next stop, the Twilight Zone.
So cool. All right, then I will see you in a couple days, and we'll talk about Twilight Zone the movie.
Make sure to like and subscribe, but most importantly, make sure to leave a comment downstairs about the movie we just watched, or suggesting movies that you might want us to watch, or anything else you want to talk about.
Must remember this: a like is just a like, but a comment.
Check out our Patreon and nerd out with me if you want to help support us and watch extra footage and all the fancy and fun things we do on Patreon for our Patreon peeps. Thanks for hanging out at the movie club.
Please, boss, let's go. Ain't nothing but trouble for you here.